New Jersey Governor Christie is traveling the country as head of the Republican Governors Association, trying to elect GOP candidates this year and perhaps set the stage for a potential 2016 run for the White House. Governor Christie joins us now from Florida, where there's a tight governor's race for his first Sunday show interview of 2014. Governor, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Good morning, Chris. Good to be with you.
Governor, you just heard, and we want to talk, before we get to politics, to this whole controversy about Ebola and the quarantine. You just heard Dr. Fauci, New York City's health commissioner, Dr. Mary Bassett, says reportedly was furious that she was not informed before the quarantine was imposed. Do you no longer trust the CDC and scientists?
Well, no, that's a pretty general statement, Chris. Of course we do. But the fact of the matter is that the CDC protocols, as Dr. Fauci admitted himself, have been a moving target. And imagine that you're the person in charge of the public health of the people of a large, densely populated state. In fact, the most densely populated state in the union, and these protocols continue to move and change. It was my conclusion that we needed to do this to protect the public health of the people of New Jersey. Governor Cuomo agreed, and now Mayor Emanuel agrees, and I think the CDC eventually will come around to our point of view on this.
And what about Dr. Fauci, who says it's just not good science to quarantine people when they're not symptomatic because they can't spread the disease in those situations?
Well, listen, I have great respect for Dr. Fauci, but what he's counting on is a voluntary system with folks who may or may not comply. We had this situation in New Jersey, Chris, as you know, with the NBC News crew that said that they were going to self-quarantine, and then 2 days later, they were out picking up takeout food in Princeton and walking around the streets of Princeton. I mean, the fact of the matter is that I don't believe, when you're dealing with something as serious as this, that we can count on a voluntary system. This is government's job. If anything else, the government's job is to protect the safety and health of our citizens. And so we've taken this action, and I absolutely have no second thoughts about it.
Well, let me just ask you about one other aspect of it. Dr. Fauci talks about the unintended consequence. Everyone agrees that the only way you're going to stop this crisis is to end Ebola in West Africa, and the concern is that the medical workers, the doctors, the nurses that are willing to take their chances and go over there, when they hear now that they're going to have to undergo a mandatory 3-week quarantine, when they come back, may decide not to go in the first place. And in fact, the first nurse who has gone through the quarantine in New Jersey feels she was badly treated. So are you concerned that you're going to disincentivize people from going over there to help stop the outbreak?
No, I'm really not, Chris, because I believe that folks who want to take that step and are willing to volunteer also understand that it's in their interest and in the public health interest to have a 21-day period thereafter if they've been directly exposed to people with the virus. And as we saw with what happened with some of the healthcare workers in Texas, with the CDC shifting protocols, we had people who were infected from that type of contact. And we just can't have that in the New York, New Jersey area. And that's why Governor Cuomo and I agree on this. And now you see that they agree in Chicago as well. I think this is a policy that will become a national policy sooner rather than later.
All right, let's talk some politics. You're in Florida as head of the Republican Governors Association. Let's put up the numbers on the governor's races. At this point, Republicans currently hold 29 governor's seats, Democrats 21, but this year Republicans are defending 22 governorships and Democrats only 14. Governor, where do you see the count? It's now 29-21 Republican. Where do you see the count after the election?
Well, Chris, it's very interesting. You know, we're also defending 9 governorships in states that President Obama has won twice. And so we have a pretty daunting task on our hands, and I think everybody expected us to be a little bit on our heels, and it's now quite to the contrary. We're on offense in more states than we're on defense. But the fact is that we have 12 races right now that are within the margin of error, with just 9 days to go until the election. And so I think no one can really predict exactly where we're going to be, and I've been more involved in these races than anyone on our side of the aisle. But the fact is, it's going to be a real battle all the way down to Election Day. But because of the great job that our Republican governors have done and some of the real good things that our candidates are proposing in challenger races, I think we're going to come through this very, very well.
Let me ask you briefly about Wisconsin, where people around Republican Governor Scott Walker, who is seeking re-election, are complaining that the RGA is not doing it enough to support him. And they're even suggesting that maybe the reason is because you view him as a possible threat, a possible contender for the presidency in 2016. Your response, sir?
Well, listen, the facts just don't back that up, Chris. First of all, Scott Walker and I have a great personal relationship. I just spoke to Scott again a couple of days ago, and we have a great personal relationship, and I'll be going next week to campaign for him 2 different times. Secondly, we've spent over $6 million already in the state of Wisconsin on this effort, and over the course of Scott's 3 races for governor, 2010, 2012, and 2014, we spent over $20 million. And so, you know, that's just folks who are in the punditry who want to, you know, talk about backroom kind of stuff, which just has no relationship to reality. I am a complete Scott Walker supporter, always have been, and we're going to work as hard as we can to make sure he's reelected, and I believe he will be reelected on November 4th.
Governor, you mentioned President Obama. While he's staying away from Democratic Senate races, he's actually campaigning in several of the governor's races. In fact, in these final days, he's going to Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Maine, and Michigan. Is it harder to tie a Democratic gubernatorial candidate in a state race to President Obama and his policies?
It depends on who that Democrat is, obviously, Chris, and what their record is. For instance, in Michigan, Congressman Gary Schauer completely supports the Obama agenda, and that's why Rick Snyder, I believe, on top of the fact that he has an extraordinary record of job creation and growth and bringing Detroit back in Michigan, will be elected. Contributing factor, of course, is Congressman Schauer's record of supporting the Obama agenda in Congress. So it very much depends on who that Democratic candidate is. But what we than anything else are the great records and the great ideas of our Republican governors and our Republican challengers. You look at someone like Charlie Baker in Massachusetts is running an outstanding race there. We've got a lot of great challengers around the country. Bruce Rauner in Illinois is doing a great job in that very blue state. Tom Foley in Connecticut is doing a great job in that very blue state. And keep an eye on Larry Hogan down in Maryland, also doing a good job in a very blue state. Those are places where we're pushing, Chris, and where we may just have some success on election night.
Governor, I don't have to tell you, this is the first time that you've done a Sunday show since Bridgegate, the scandal about the closing of those lanes from Fort Lee, New Jersey, onto the George Washington Bridge, causing a tremendous traffic jam because of the fact that the mayor of Fort Lee refused to support your re-election. There was a report in September, last month, that 9 months into their investigation, that federal prosecutors had found no evidence that you had prior knowledge of the lane closures, and yet now, more than a month later, 10 months into the investigation, the state and federal investigations continue. Question, why do you think it's taking so long?
You know, Chris, I did this for 7 years of my career before I became governor. I was the United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey. And one thing I learned very clearly is any time that politicians tried to guess what was going on in prosecutors' offices, they were making a big mistake. So I don't speculate about that stuff. All the people of New Jersey know and need to know is that I had absolutely nothing to do with this. And that seems to be the conclusion that some folks are coming to as well. And I know it will be the conclusion ultimately because I know the truth.
Well, you talk about prosecutors. That's the federal case. The state case is being handled by state legislators. Do you think there's an effort by some of the Democrats there to keep you under a cloud?
Of course, and if you look at what those hearings have been like, they've been hyper-partisan political. But that's okay, Chris. You don't get anywhere about complaining about these things. Fact of the matter is, we took the steps we needed to take when we discovered that something in the administration had gone wrong. And now we move on, and we've continued to govern and gotten things like bail reform done in New Jersey over the last number of months. And now we move on, and we've continued to govern and gotten things like bail reform done in New Jersey over the last number of months. Got a balanced budget passed again, and did all the things that you expect the government to be doing, working with Democrats who do not want to be hyper-partisan and political. So this is not the kind of stuff that concerns me at all. I keep doing my job and doing my job as chairman of the Republican Governors Association.
I don't want to go too deeply into it, but you brought up the budget. You're taking some criticism now for the financial situation in New Jersey. You decided to cut payments to pension funds instead of raising taxes on millionaires and businesses. The credit rating for New Jersey has actually been downgraded 8 times on your watch. And the polls in New Jersey show you with your lowest favorability rating since you became governor. What's going on?
Well, first of all, Chris, you have to remember what we inherited 5 years ago. An $11 billion budget deficit, 10 years of consecutive tax increases at the state level. This was an awful mess. And now, what have we done? We've had 5 balanced budgets in a row. We've had $2.3 billion in tax cuts to the businesses of New Jersey, 143,000 new private sector jobs, and an unemployment rate that's gone from 9.7% down to 6.5%. So we still have work to do in New Jersey, no question. But we've gotten a lot of things done over the course of the last 5 years. I'm very proud of that record, and I'm working every day to make that record even better as we go forward. So there will always be the naysayers, Chris. There will always be the critics. But I'm in there getting the job done every day, and I think that's what the people of New Jersey like about us.
All right. Let's turn to 2016. Are you going to run for president?
I don't know. Haven't made up my mind. Won't make up my mind until the beginning of the year. I've got 36 governor's races that I'm overseeing right now, in addition to a pretty busy day job, as you outlined, with the questions on Ebola and the budget and others. And so I have not made a decision, Chris, but I'm not being coy about it. I'm obviously thinking about it, but I won't make any final decision until next year.
You spoke to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce this week, and you made some comments that got some attention. Take a look.
I am convinced that the next president of the United States is going to be a governor, and it needs to be. We have had the experiment of a legislator who's never run anything, getting on-the-job training in the White House. It has not been pretty.
You were obviously taking a shot at President Obama, but were you also taking a shot at potential candidates Rand Paul and Ted Cruz?
No, what I was talking about is what we've seen in the White House over the last 6 years, and I think we see it over and over again with the crises that are happening both around the world and at home right now. You need to have someone in that chair who knows how to make those decisions, who has done it before, and that's why I advocate governors as the best people to be considered for president in 2016. But no, this was a direct commentary on the record of the last 6 years, and unfortunately, the fact that someone who's never run anything bigger than a Senate staff may not be the best training in the world to run the biggest government in the world, Chris.
In that Chamber of Commerce speech, you also said, quote, "It's time to start offending people," and there's one comment you made that a lot of people are taking offense to. Here it is.
I'm tired of hearing about the minimum wage. I really am. I don't think there's a mother or father sitting around a kitchen table tonight in America who are saying, you know, honey, if our son or daughter could just make a higher minimum wage, my God, all our dreams would be realized.
Governor, while everyone agrees that we need better paying jobs, you know, for people who are making $7.25 an hour, the minimum wage now, that getting an increase to $10 an hour would make a big difference in their lives, and that you were being cavalier about it.
Not being cavalier at all, Chris. I'm saying it exactly as I see it. What we need to do in this country is not have a debate over a higher minimum wage. We have to have a debate over creating better paying middle-class jobs in this country. And if that somehow doesn't comport with what people in the political elite want, well, I'm sorry. But I know, talking to families across New Jersey and now across this country, that what they're aspiring to is to have good-paying, middle-class jobs for their children to take, and even higher, so that they can have a stable home life, so that they can have the ability to go away on a vacation if they'd like to, so they can have the ability to save for their children to go to college. That's the kind of future that people in this country want. And the debate we need to be having is how to have a better pro-growth economy that's growing jobs and good-paying jobs. Jobs at places like Motorola Solutions or other kind of places across the country, other great businesses that operate in New Jersey and in other places across the country that create those kind of really great-paying middle-class jobs. That's the debate we should be having. There's not just income inequality in this country, Chris. The bigger problem is opportunity inequality. And that's what mothers and fathers are sitting around kitchen tables talking about, wanting for their children's future. And that's exactly what I was saying at the Chamber of Commerce, and I don't back off from those comments 1 inch.
Finally, Governor, we got about a minute left. The last time we talked was last November, just after you had been reelected as governor, and at that time you were the front runner for the Republican nomination in those absurdly early polls. Let's put some of them up on the screen. A McClatchy-Marist national poll at that time had you leading potential GOP contenders at 18%, Rand Paul at 12%, and Jeb Bush at 10%. But late last month, Bush was in front at 15%, with Paul at 13% and you at 12%. Two questions, really. One, how badly have you been damaged by Bridgegate? And secondly, what do you say to people who may like you, but worry that you may be too tough, too bare bones, too brass-knuckled for the presidency, and that even if you did know nothing about it, that you created a climate in your administration where people thought closing the lanes to a bridge was okay?
Well, first of all, there's no climate in our administration that would ever permit that, and the termination of folks who were involved, I think, proves that very clearly. Secondly, so does our bipartisan record of having achieved property tax reform in New Jersey, pension and benefit reform in New Jersey, tax cuts in New Jersey, 5 balanced budgets, where today, Chris, we're spending less in fiscal year 15 than the state of New Jersey spent in fiscal year 2008. 7 years ago. Those are all bipartisan achievements because I have a Democratic legislature. Bail reform this year and focusing on getting smart with drug rehabilitation. All bipartisan achievements that we've done this year. And so the fact is, you can't worry about those kind of polls for an election that's 3 years away. And that's certainly nothing that I worry about or is even at the front of my mind. What I'm much more concerned about is doing the job for the people of my state, which we continue to do in a second term. When you look at what's happening in Washington, Chris, you know, they can't get anything accomplished down there from the White House on down. Yet in New Jersey, we're still passing major pieces of legislation. So, no, I'm not the least bit concerned about any of that. You know what I'm concerned about? Two things right now. First and foremost, doing my job as governor of New Jersey and making our state a better place to live and work and raise a family. And second, electing as many Republicans to state houses across this country in 9 days. And I think we're going to have success at both.
Governor Christie, thank you. Thanks for joining us today. Always good to talk with you. To be continued, sir.
Absolutely, Chris. I look forward to it.